It started without warning, with no fire, no battle, and no sign of struggle, just a sudden, absolute silence. One by one, human colonies stopped transmitting. Ships that once filled the stars with chatter and music went quiet. Trade beacons that never slept flickered once, then died. At first, the Galactic Council dismissed it as a malfunction. "Their systems are unstable," said the speaker, waving off the reports. "They rely too much on emotion and improvisation." But when the silence stretched into a full day, the confidence in his voice began to crack. By the third day, every human signal, civilian, military, or private, had vanished completely. The galaxy that had once mocked humanity for its noise now sat trembling in the dark. The Council summoned an emergency meeting on Solith Prime, the glittering capital of galactic power. The Great Hall was packed with alien delegates, all speaking in nervous tones. "It must be sabotage," one shouted. "The humans have done this to deceive us." Another hissed, "Perhaps they destroyed themselves. You know how unstable they are." The speaker stood, his cold voice cutting through the noise. "Order," he commanded. "This is not the time for speculation. We will investigate. Humanity cannot simply vanish. Someone must be behind this." But deep down, he knew no one was. The humans had done what no other species ever had. They had gone silent by choice. Across the stars, panic spread like wildfire. On the trade world of Velize, entire economies collapsed within hours. Human merchants were gone, and with them, the flow of essential materials, food, medicine, technology. Alien engineers tried to replicate human designs, but their ships refused to function. On mining planets, alien workers stared at abandoned Terran machinery that still hummed faintly, as if waiting for its creators to return. On frontier stations, lonely outposts broadcast desperate calls into the void. "Terran ships, respond. Please respond." None ever did. The silence was not just absence. It was a presence in itself, heavy, watchful, and unnerving. The Council finally authorized a scouting mission to Earth, hoping to prove humanity was still there. A fleet of reconnaissance vessels entered Sol System under strict orders to maintain contact every hour. They sent their first report as they crossed the orbit of Mars. No human ships detected. Artificial structures intact. Proceeding to Earth. Their second report came hours later, orbiting Earth now. Planet appears lifeless. No surface movement, no lights. Cities remain, but there are no power signatures. The next transmission was filled with static and a single phrase repeated 3 times before the line went dead: "They're gone." The fleet never returned. When the footage from their black boxes was recovered weeks later by automated drones, the Council broadcast it privately to its top officials. The recording began with a view of Earth, still beautiful and blue, floating quietly against the black. But as the camera zoomed closer, the oceans shimmered strangely, almost metallic. The continents were covered in faint networks of glowing patterns, lines of energy too organized to be natural. The pilot's voice trembled as he spoke. "Are we seeing this? What is that?" Then a low hum filled the ship, and every instrument shut down at once. The last frame showed the ship's reflection in orbit, fading into light before vanishing completely. No explosion. No debris. Just silence again. Fear swept the Council worlds. The speaker demanded that all information be classified. "We cannot let panic spread," he said. But it was too late. Whispers had already begun. Across alien cities, people spoke quietly of the day of silence. They said the humans had grown tired of the galaxy's corruption. They said humanity had retreated to build something greater. Others whispered darker theories, that they had ascended, that their silence was not escape but evolution. Still, one thing united every rumor: fear. No one dared speak openly against the humans anymore. Even their enemies lowered their voices when mentioning their name. On the fringe world of Tovan, an old alien trader sat in a dusty cantina, telling stories to anyone who would listen. "I once saw them fight," he said, his voice shaking. "They were wild, unstoppable. But they laughed even in battle. You can't kill a species that laughs at death." You can only wait for them to come back. His words spread through the networks, repeated millions of times until they became prophecy. You can't kill what remembers. Meanwhile, strange phenomena began to occur. Across uninhabited systems, ships reported flickers of blue light on the edges of their sensors, phantom signals that disappeared the moment anyone tried to trace them. Entire planets began to experience sudden magnetic shifts and bursts of unidentified energy. Scientists called it cosmic static. But those who had known humans whispered a different name: echoes. They said humanity was watching, testing, waiting. The galaxy that had once treated humans as reckless children now felt like a child itself, abandoned in a dark room, realizing too late that it had driven away the only light. In the council chamber, the speaker stood alone long after the delegates had left. He looked out at the stars through the transparent dome, his reflection faintly visible against the void. "Where are you?" he whispered. His words vanished into the stillness. He had once laughed at human unpredictability, calling it weakness. Now, that same unpredictability terrified him. Because silence from humans was not surrender, it was calculation. On the edge of the galaxy, in a system long forgotten, an old Terran ship drifted quietly through the void. Its hull was scorched, its markings faded, but its engines glowed faintly with life. Inside, a single human sat in darkness, staring at a console filled with blinking data. The reports from the galaxy flashed one after another. Panic, fear, instability. The man exhaled slowly and whispered, "They wanted peace without us. Let them have it." He turned off the screen, and the ship faded into the shadows of deep space. The silence deepened. No declarations. No warnings. No sign of return. Yet, in that void, the galaxy began to understand the truth. Humanity had never been the danger. They had been the balance. And now, with them gone, the galaxy trembled under its own weight, realizing far too late what it had lost. The silence was not emptiness. It was a mirror. And every world that looked into it saw the same reflection, their greatest mistake staring back at them from the darkness. The silence stretched into weeks, and then into months. What began as disbelief slowly turned into dread. The Galactic Council had never faced a crisis it could not control, until now. The humans were gone, and their absence was tearing the galaxy apart. Entire trade routes collapsed overnight. Civilizations that had depended on human technology suddenly found their cities dark and their machines lifeless. On some worlds, riots broke out as governments accused each other of hiding the truth. On others, temples were built overnight, their priests whispering that the humans had ascended into the void. No one knew what was real anymore, and that was the most terrifying part. Humanity's silence was louder than any war they had ever fought. The council tried to appear calm, but its leaders were unraveling. The speaker of the council, once a proud, silver-scaled being who ruled from the shining towers of Solith Prime, now spent sleepless nights staring at endless reports. "How can they all be gone?" he muttered again and again, his aides too afraid to answer. On the table before him lay holoscreens showing dead colonies, abandoned ships, and strange energy readings from Earth's system. "They didn't die," one of his advisors said quietly. "They left." The speaker turned sharply, his eyes cold. "Don't be absurd. A species cannot simply disappear." But even he didn't believe his own words. Across the galaxy, humanity's allies began to fracture. The coalition of free worlds, an alliance formed during the Great War, was falling apart. Without human diplomacy to hold it together, old rivalries reignited. The Vraxians accused the Delorians of sabotaging human communications. The Delorians blamed the Council for driving the humans away. The Council blamed no one publicly, but secretly, they feared that humanity's disappearance had been deliberate, and that it was punishment. "Perhaps this is their vengeance," whispered one ambassador. "They didn't need to attack us. They just left us with our own corruption." The idea spread quickly and quietly, infecting the minds of even the most powerful rulers. Ships were sent to the Sol system again, carefully this time. Each expedition carried drones instead of living beings, programmed to scan from a distance and send data back. None returned. The few that did transmit before vanishing showed strange anomalies. Earth's orbit was unchanged, but its gravitational readings were different, heavier somehow, as if something massive was hidden within. Scientists debated endlessly. Some claimed Earth had been encased in a barrier of unknown origin. Others said the humans had shifted the planet into another dimension. The truth was stranger than anyone imagined, because no one could even see Earth anymore. When telescopes pointed toward the blue planet, all they found was empty black. Whispers began to turn into fear-fueled myths. On frontier worlds, travelers told stories of ghostly ships appearing in the void, massive vessels without heat signatures or lights, drifting silently through space. They were Terran ships, one miner swore, his voice trembling. Their hulls glowed faint blue, and they moved like shadows. No sound, no signals, just watching. The Council dismissed such stories as superstition, but secretly, their intelligence division collected hundreds of similar reports. Every story said the same thing. The ships never attacked, never communicated, never interfered. They simply appeared, observed, and disappeared. By the second month, the galaxy began to realize how deeply humanity had been woven into its structure. Their technology powered the Council's hyperlanes. Their engineers maintained the great orbital arrays. Their traders connected thousands of worlds. Without them, everything was failing. Whole economies collapsed. Planets plunged into darkness. Medical stations lost their human-built life support systems and fell silent. Slowly, the galaxy began to decay. For the first time, they saw what humanity had truly given them, not dominance, but stability. And now, it was gone. In the shadows of the council chambers, debates turned into accusations. You drove them away, shouted the ambassador from the DeLorean worlds. You exiled their fleets, mocked their leaders, stripped them of influence, and now you ask where they are. The speaker slammed his staff down, silencing the room. You speak as if they were gods, he snapped. They were mortal, like us. But the delegates could hear the fear behind his words. Because deep down, everyone remembered the last time humanity had gone quiet, before the War of Retaliation, when their fleets had emerged from darkness and erased an empire in a single night. Some among the council began to call for desperate measures. One scientist proposed activating the ancient relay network, the same system humans had once helped build, to try and locate their signal. They must have left a trace, she argued. No species can disappear without a signature. The speaker hesitated, but finally gave the order. The relays lit up across the stars, sending out pulses of energy toward the void. For a moment, hope filled the galaxy again. But when the relays responded, every screen went black. A single message appeared, written in human script across all systems: you wanted silence. Now you live in it. The message vanished after 5 seconds, and every relay went dark permanently. The council was paralyzed. No one dared to speak. The humans were not gone. They were watching. Every attempt to find them only proved how powerless the rest of the galaxy truly was. For the first time in its history, the council declared a state of universal emergency. But it was meaningless. Armies could not fight silence. Fleets could not chase shadows. Weeks turned to months, and then to years. The galaxy became quiet, not the peace of unity, but the quiet of fear. Without humanity's influence, entire star sectors began to tear themselves apart. Pirates rose where human patrols once kept order. Border wars erupted where human ambassadors once mediated. The great council worlds turned inward, trying to protect themselves from chaos. Yet everywhere, one truth echoed louder than war ever could. They had driven away the only species that had ever truly cared for balance. Humanity's noise, their laughter, their courage, their constant defiance, had been the heartbeat of the stars. Now, the galaxy could hear only the emptiness they left behind. On Solith Prime, the speaker aged in silence. His once grand hall stood half empty. The marble floors cracked, the banners faded. One night, unable to sleep, he walked alone to the observation deck. The stars glittered beyond the glass, cold and still. You wanted them gone, he whispered to himself. And now you have your peace. His reflection looked old, tired, broken. In that silence, for the first time in his life, he felt the full weight of what he had done. Far away, beyond the known edge of the galaxy, hidden in the dark between galaxies, a human fleet drifted silently. Thousands of ships moved as one, their hulls marked with the glowing emblem of the Terran Union. On the flagship, a single figure stood before a vast window, watching the distant light of the Milky Way. "They finally understand," the commander said softly. Silence was the only way to teach them. A young officer beside him spoke carefully. "Will we ever return, sir?" The commander's gaze hardened. "When they remember who we were, not what they made us. Until then, let the stars remind them what our silence means." The fleet slowly turned, its engines igniting with a low hum that rippled across the void. And in that moment, across countless worlds, the night sky seemed to shimmer faintly, as though the universe itself had blinked. The silence continued, deeper and colder than ever. But somewhere beyond that silence, humanity waited, watching, and remembering every word the galaxy had once spoken against them. The silence had become part of the galaxy now. What began as confusion had turned into a cold, haunting stillness that no one could escape. Months turned into years, and still no human signal was detected. Entire civilizations built monuments to the lost species. Statues of Terran explorers and scientists stood in plazas, half out of respect and half out of fear. Fear that one day, the silence would end. Across 1,000 worlds, whispers spread through the night. "They're not gone. They are watching." The Galactic Council, once the heart of power and unity, had become a house of ghosts. The grand hall that once rang with debates and laughter was now filled with tension and distrust. Delegates no longer shouted. They whispered. They spoke in cautious tones, afraid that the very air might be listening. Every member of the council knew the truth but refused to speak it aloud. They had pushed humanity too far. The speaker of the council sat alone in his office, staring at the faint light of dying stars through his massive window. He had aged beyond his years, his once proud silver scales now dull and cracked. The reports on his desk were the same every day. Famine, rebellion, economic collapse. Worlds were falling one by one, not from invasion, but from neglect. Humanity's technology had powered their worlds for centuries. Their ships maintained trade. Their engineers fixed the unfixable. Without them, the galaxy was decaying like an empire built on lies finally exposed to the light. He rubbed his temples, trying to silence the storm in his mind. "We thought we were saving the galaxy from chaos," he whispered to himself. But they were the order. The door slid open, and a nervous aide stepped in. "Speaker," she said softly, "another transmission." He sighed heavily. "From Way." "The Rim Sector," she said, handing him a data crystal. "A freighter captain reports something." The speaker hesitated. The last dozen reports had been rumors, ghost ships, strange lights, phantom signals. But this time, the aide looked pale. "You should see it yourself," she said. He inserted the crystal into his terminal. The hologram flickered to life, showing a shaky recording from a ship's cockpit. The pilot's breathing was loud and uneven. "This is Captain Mora's of the freighter Eliara Dawn," he said. "We detected a human distress beacon near the Vartan Drift. Thought it was impossible, but it's real. We followed it. It led us to an old Terran ship, intact, but empty. No crew, no bodies, just something playing on loop." The image cut to the ship's interior, dust-covered consoles, flickering lights, and a faint hum that sounded almost like a heartbeat. Then came the sound. A woman's voice, human, soft and calm. "You made us choose silence. Now you live in it." The recording ended with static and a flash of white light. The captain's ship vanished from sensors moments later. The speaker sat frozen. The aide whispered, "Should we send an investigation team?" He shook his head slowly. "No. If it's real, they'll find us before we find them." He stood and walked to the window, staring into the void. "They're speaking again," he said quietly. "Not with words, with consequences." The following months were filled with strange occurrences. Unmanned stations began to malfunction in ways no one could explain. Old human-built satellites, long thought dead, suddenly powered back on, transmitting unreadable signals. Ships crossing the border of Terran space disappeared without distress calls. The Council's military began reinforcing borders, but morale was collapsing. Soldiers whispered that the humans had built machines that could think and act without command. "They don't need armies anymore," one officer said. "They just need to remember your name." Fear turned into obsession. The Council authorized Project Echo, a desperate attempt to re-establish contact with humanity through quantum resonance, a risky experiment that could transmit messages across realities. The scientists warned it was unstable, but the speaker ordered it anyway. "If they are out there," he said, "we will speak again." The machine was built deep beneath Solith Prime, glowing with the blue energy of human-designed reactors they barely understood. When it activated, the air itself trembled. "Signal locked," the lead scientist said. "We have something." A voice came through, distorted and faint. It wasn't human or alien. It was something between, almost mechanical yet strangely emotional. "You keep calling," it said, "but you never listened when we spoke." The scientists froze. The voice continued, soft and almost mournful. "You feared what made us different. Now you fear what made us strong. You wanted silence. You wanted control. So we left you both." Then the lights went out. The entire facility went dark, and every backup system failed. The only thing that remained was that single phrase looping through the speakers, "We remember." When power was finally restored, the machine was gone, vanished. No debris, no sign of destruction. Just an empty chamber where it had stood. The Council sealed the project immediately, declaring it a catastrophic malfunction, but word spread quickly. Every citizen of Solith Prime heard the story. Every colony whispered the same thing. Humanity had answered. Now, even the most powerful worlds began to lose faith in the Council. Several systems withdrew completely, declaring independence and forming the free sectors. Their leaders publicly praised humanity's example. "They did what we never dared to do," one governor declared. "They walked away from corruption." For the first time, the Council faced not rebellion, but irrelevance. The speaker knew it was over. Late one night, he stood alone in the Council chamber, staring at the empty seats that once represented the galaxy's greatest powers. The silence was heavy. He almost missed the shouting, the chaos, the arrogance. "We thought we ruled the stars," he said softly, "but we were only their guests." He looked up at the night sky, and for the briefest moment, he thought he saw movement, tiny flickers of blue light crossing between stars. They were too synchronized, too precise to be random. He smiled faintly, exhaustion softening his face. "They are still out there," he whispered. "Watching. Waiting." Far beyond the Council's reach, in the uncharted void between galaxies, a vast human megastructure orbited a black star. Inside its glowing halls, human scientists monitored galactic signals in silence. The screens showed endless streams of Council transmissions. Fear, confusion, despair. One scientist turned to another. "They still think we're gone." The other smiled sadly. "Good. Let them learn what silence feels like." In the command center, the leader of the Terran Union stood before a massive hologram of the Milky Way. "They built their empire on our noise," he said. "Now, they'll rebuild it on the echo of our absence." He turned to his officers. "Activate the outer grid. Let them see what they've lost." Across the galaxy, faint human signals began to appear again. Old songs, laughter, fragments of history, each lasting only seconds before fading. The galaxy listened in awe, weeping and afraid. For the first time in years, humanity's voice returned, not in anger, but as a haunting reminder. The Council realized too late that humanity had not been destroyed, nor defeated. They had chosen silence to show the galaxy what it truly was without them. And in that silence, the galaxy finally began to hear. The silence had changed everything. Once, the Galactic Council had ruled with arrogance, believing themselves eternal. But now, The mighty halls of Solith Prime echoed with nothing but fear. The chamber where thousands of alien leaders once debated and boasted their dominance had become an empty cathedral of regret. Holoscreens displayed endless reports. Failing colonies, rebellions spreading, ancient infrastructure collapsing. The galaxy that had mocked humanity's defiance now begged for their return. But humanity did not answer. And that, more than any war, was what terrified them most. For centuries, the Council had underestimated humans. They saw them as emotional, chaotic, dangerous. But those same qualities had once made humanity the soul of the stars, the spark that united civilizations that would otherwise have torn each other apart. Humans had fought wars not for conquest, but for meaning. They had explored the unknown not for greed, but for curiosity. They had stood between empires and chaos like stubborn guardians, never asking for gratitude, only fairness. And now, without them, the galaxy felt like a body missing its heart. In the highest tower of the Council, the speaker sat alone. His reflection in the glass looked like that of a stranger, tired, hollow, haunted. Outside, the once bright skyline of Solith Prime was dim. Half the city was dark from power shortages. Riots flared nightly as people demanded food and answers. The speaker's aide entered quietly. "Another riot in the lower districts, sir. They chant your name with curses." He didn't respond. "And the scientists have new readings from the Terran sectors." That caught his attention. "Show me." The aide placed a data crystal on the table. The hologram flickered to life, showing the black expanse of Terran space. A red border marked the region as forbidden, but beyond that border, sensors showed strange readings, ripples of blue light, waves of gravitational distortion, faint echoes of human energy signatures. "They're not gone," the aide whispered. "They are moving." The speaker's breath caught. "Moving way?" The aide shook her head. "We can't tell. The signals are coordinated. It's like they're building something." The speaker stood, staring at the hologram with a mix of awe and dread. "Building? After all this time?" The aide hesitated. "It's vast. Our instruments can't detect the full structure. Whatever it is, it stretches across several systems. It might not even be physical. It could be energy-based." The speaker turned away, gripping the railing beside him. "And yet we still can't see them," he said softly. "It's as if they're ghosts." Elsewhere across the stars, strange events began to unfold. Entire fleets sent to explore the Terran border vanished without firing a shot. Space stations reported hearing faint human voices whispering through their comms, recordings of old songs, laughter, even the sound of children playing. The Council tried to dismiss it as interference, but deep down, they knew the truth. The humans were still out there, watching, remembering, waiting. The galaxy's paranoia grew worse by the day. On dozens of worlds, extremist groups began to worship humanity as divine beings, calling them the architects of silence. Others cursed their name, calling them ghosts who haunted the living. One rebel broadcast declared, "The humans didn't disappear, they evolved. And when they come back, they'll decide who deserves to remain." The Council attempted to suppress these transmissions, but the effort was useless. Fear had become faith, and faith was uncontrollable. On the 4th anniversary of the silence, the speaker convened a secret meeting with what was left of his inner circle. They gathered in a dimly lit room deep beneath the capital, far from listening devices or cameras. "We cannot continue like this," said Admiral Thor, his voice low but steady. "Our worlds are dying. The Unity Trade Network is gone. Without Terran technology, our engines fail. Our reactors flicker. We need their systems to survive." The speaker nodded grimly. "And yet, they will not answer." "Then we must force an answer," Thor snapped. "Send probes deeper into their space. Push past their borders if we must." One of the scientists, an elderly alien with trembling hands, looked up. "With all due respect, Admiral, the last 5 expeditions vanished without trace. If they wanted us to enter, they would have let us." The Admiral bared his teeth. You're suggesting we do nothing while the galaxy starves. The scientist sighed. I'm suggesting we remember who they were. Humans never acted without reason. If they're silent, it's not vengeance, it's patience. The speaker leaned back, his eyes shadowed. Perhaps, he said quietly, they are waiting for us to change. But change was something the Council didn't know how to do. Within weeks, Admiral Thor launched his mission anyway. A massive fleet crossed into Terran space, their engines cutting through the dark. For 3 days, the Council received updates, clear, confident, routine. Then on the 4th day, the transmissions stopped. The last message received was a single line from the flagship. We have found something, alive. Then silence. 3 months later, a fragment of one of those ships was found drifting near the border. Burn marks covered the hull, but there were no signs of combat. Every system was fried, as though it had been wiped clean by an energy surge. The only data recovered was a single file, an image of a massive structure floating in the void. It was circular, larger than any planet, glowing with soft white light. At its center was a symbol recognized instantly by every species in the galaxy, the Terran insignia. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had built a fortress, a world, perhaps an entire civilization, beyond the edge of known space. The Council was paralyzed. They've built their own galaxy, whispered one of the aides. Their silence wasn't retreat, it was creation. The speaker could only stare at the image, his mind unraveling. We caged gods, he said softly, and they outgrew the cage. That night, across the galaxy, every communication network flickered at once. Screens turned black. Then, a single voice spoke, not mechanical, not angry, but calm and human. We asked for peace, it said. You answered with arrogance. You silenced us when we spoke. So we listened instead. And in the quiet, we learned. The message paused, and for a moment, every heart in the galaxy seemed to stop. Now the silence is over. The screens went dark again. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, across dozens of systems, massive energy readings spiked, brief flashes of light, like stars being born. They weren't weapons. They were beacons. New worlds, human worlds, emerging from hidden folds of space. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had evolved. On Solith Prime, the speaker collapsed into his chair, trembling. They're coming back, he whispered. His aide's voice shook. What will they do? The speaker stared at the holographic map, where dozens of new Terran signals glowed across the void. Whatever they want, he said. Far beyond the Council's reach, in the shining city of the human stronghold known as Erebus Prime, Commander Elias Ward watched the unfolding chaos on his screen. Behind him, the stars burned brighter than ever. They finally understand, he said softly. Silence was never surrender. It was preparation. His officers saluted as the fleet prepared to move. The galaxy had begged for peace, and humanity had granted it, through silence. Now, they would show the galaxy what came after peace. The 5th year after the silence began like all the others, quiet, uncertain, and heavy with fear. Yet this time, something had changed. For weeks, the skies above a dozen worlds flickered with strange lights. The Council's observatories recorded massive distortions in space, but no one could explain them. Then one night, across every inhabited system, the same event occurred. Stars dimmed, power grids faltered, and every screen across the galaxy lit up at once. A single message appeared in every language, simple and unmistakable. The Terran Union is watching. Panic followed instantly. On Solith Prime, citizens flooded the streets, staring at the sky as if expecting the ghosts of humanity to appear above them. Military forces were placed on full alert, but their leaders didn't know what to prepare for. Humanity had been gone for years. No ships, no transmissions, no evidence of life. Yet now, the galaxy could feel them again. Not in open war, but in presence. It was as if the humans had returned without returning, a shadow hanging over every living being. The Council gathered in emergency session, their chamber packed for the first time since the silence began. Fear radiated from every delegate. "They are taunting us," one shouted. "They've been hiding, building their power, and now they mean to strike." "Strike with what?" another retorted. "We've seen no fleets, no weapons. Only words." The speaker silenced them with emotion. "Words can be more dangerous than weapons," he said softly. "And these are words we cannot ignore." He looked around the chamber, his voice heavy. "We once exiled them. We erased their voice. Now they've given us silence for years, and we see what that silence has done." He hesitated, then added, "Perhaps it's time we listen, before they decide to speak again." Meanwhile, far beyond the council's borders, deep in the black of space, the truth was far stranger than the rumors. Humanity had not simply hidden, they had evolved. The Terran Union had constructed an empire unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It stretched across systems cloaked in shadow, invisible to senses, powered by technology beyond comprehension. At its heart lay Erebus Prime, the capital world of the new human age. It orbited a dying star, its cities glowing with soft blue light that pierced the darkness. Towers made of living metal reached into the sky, and vast orbital rings pulsed with energy drawn directly from the void. Humanity had learned to harness silence itself, energy from quantum stillness, a power source that defied the known laws of physics. In the command citadel of Erebus, Commander Elias Ward stood before the massive holographic projection of the Milky Way. Thousands of red dots marked the chaos within the Council's domain: wars, famine, and collapse. He watched quietly, his expression unreadable. "They're eating themselves," said Admiral Niven beside him. "Every system that once relied on Terran technology is failing. They're choking on their own arrogance." Ward nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "Only when they've fallen far enough can they understand what they lost." The Admiral hesitated. "And when they do?" Ward's eyes turned toward the holographic map, focusing on the faint glow of Solith Prime. "Then they'll beg for forgiveness, and we'll decide if they deserve it." Humanity's fleet, the largest ever built, remained hidden behind layers of folded space. It was not a fleet of war, but of deterrence. Each ship carried weapons capable of unmaking entire star systems, but their purpose was not destruction. It was restraint. Humanity had learned that true power was not in firing a weapon, but in the decision not to. Every soldier in the Terran Union was trained not to fight, but to endure. Every commander was taught not to conquer, but to remember. Humanity had turned their silence into the deadliest weapon in the galaxy, a weapon of fear and reflection. But not all humans agreed with the policy of patience. Deep within Erebus, a faction had begun to rise: the Dominion, a group of military officers and survivors who had lost everything before the silence. To them, the Council's suffering was not enough. They wanted justice, vengeance for centuries of humiliation. "They made us beg for existence," said General Rail, leader of the Dominion. "Now they will beg for mercy." His followers cheered, their voices echoing through the metal halls. "The Council must burn," he continued. "Their worlds must fall silent, as ours once did." When Commander Ward heard of the rebellion, he called Rail to the Citadel. The two men faced each other in silence for several moments. "You think vengeance will heal us?" Ward said quietly. "You think another war will make them understand?" Rail's eyes burned. "Understanding doesn't matter," he spat. "Fear does." Ward stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "That's what they thought when they exiled us. You'd make us what they were." Rail sneered. "Maybe that's what we need to be." Ward's expression hardened. "If we become them, then the silence meant nothing." Their argument ended without resolution, but the seeds of division had been planted. The galaxy's fear was growing, and now so was humanity's. The silence that once united them was beginning to split. Some wanted peace, others revenge. And across the stars, the galaxy trembled, sensing that humanity's stillness would not last forever. Back on Solith Prime, the speaker's scientists were desperate to understand the faint signals coming from beyond Terran space. "Its energy," one of them reported, pointing at a glowing chart. But not from any known source. It's like they're pulling power from nothing. The speaker frowned. From nothing? The scientist hesitated. No, sir. From silence. The speaker's blood ran cold. Then it's true, he whispered. They've learned to make silence speak. That night, the stars above Solith Prime shifted again. Every world in the Council's domain saw it. Lines of blue light forming constellations that no one had seen before. For 6 hours, they glowed in perfect symmetry, spelling out a single Terran word across the night sky: remember. Panic spread like wildfire. Religious leaders called it divine punishment. Scientists called it impossible. The speaker stood before the terrified people and tried to speak, but no words came. The message was too clear. Humanity wasn't threatening them. They were warning them. The galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of, and now it was being reminded. In the depths of space, Commander Ward stood on the observation deck of the Eclipse, his flagship, watching the holographic display of the constellations shining across the galaxy. Admiral Niven approached. "They're afraid," she said softly. "Good," Ward replied. "Fear is the first step to wisdom." He turned to face the darkness beyond the stars. "But if they fail to learn?" His voice trailed off. The Admiral finished the thought quietly. "Then silence will fall again." Ward looked out into the endless void, the faint glimmer of the Milky Way reflected in his eyes. "No," he said softly. "Next time, there won't be silence. There will be nothing left to remember." The stars flickered once, as if in agreement. And somewhere across the galaxy, billions of beings looked up at the night sky, finally realizing that silence had never been humanity's surrender. It had been their judgment. The galaxy was no longer at peace. The 5th year after the silence had ended with fear written across every sky, and the 6th began with chaos. Entire star systems fell into disarray as the blue Terran constellations still shimmered faintly above the galactic core, like ghostly words carved into the night. Remember. That one word had shattered everything the Galactic Council had left. Trade froze, alliances broke, and even faith itself began to crumble. Some worshipped the message as divine, others saw it as a warning, but all agreed on one truth: humanity had not disappeared. They were waiting. On Solith Prime, riots filled the streets. People chanted the same phrase over and over: "Bring them back. Bring the humans back." The speaker watched from his tower as buildings burned and crowds surged. Guards fired stun pulses into the air, but the people were too many. The galaxy's oldest and proudest capital had become a world begging for its former outcasts to save it. It was an irony the speaker could not bear. In his private chamber, he stood before a holoscreen showing the most recent council meeting. Delegates screamed at one another, some demanding contact with the humans, others calling for a final military stand. The speaker silenced the chaos with a weary voice. "We are already at their mercy," he said. "You just don't see it yet." Meanwhile, far beyond known space, Commander Elias Ward and the Terran Union observed everything from the command deck of Erebus Prime. He stood before a panoramic display of the galaxy, each sector glowing faintly red from distress signals. The galaxy was tearing itself apart faster than any weapon could have achieved. "They are begging for us now," said Admiral Niven quietly. "The same voices that once called us dangerous now cry our name for help." Ward didn't smile. His expression was calm, cold. "This is not their punishment," he said. "This is their reflection. They built this chaos with our silence. They made themselves see who they really are." Niven hesitated. "And when do we intervene?" Ward looked out at the stars. "When they stop asking for us to fix them, and start asking to understand us." But not everyone in the Terran Union shared Ward's patience. The Dominion, the faction of human officers who demanded vengeance, had grown stronger in secret. Hidden deep within the shadows of the Erebus megastructure, General Rail stood before his followers, fire in his voice. "They fear us now, but fear fades. We gave them mercy, and they spit on it. They'll never learn until they kneel." His soldiers cheered, their armor glinting under crimson light. "Commander Ward has forgotten what they did to us," Rail continued. But we haven't. We were starved, exiled, slaughtered. Their council destroyed everything, and now he wants to forgive them? No. This time, we finish what they started. Rael's fleet was already being prepared. Dozens of warships, silent and black, designed to strike with precision. They called their mission the Last Echo. The goal was simple: strike the Council's heart, cripple their homeworld, and make them feel the same helplessness humanity once endured. When the Dominion moved, the galaxy would burn again. On Soloth Prime, whispers of rebellion reached the speaker's ears. "The humans are divided," said one of his intelligence officers. "They have their own factions. Some seek peace, others revenge." The speaker's eyes widened slightly. "Then we still have a chance," he said. "If we can reach the commander, the one called Ward, perhaps he'll listen." The officer frowned. "And if the others reach us first?" The speaker's voice hardened. "Then we won't live long enough to regret it." A desperate plan was born. The council decided to send one final envoy, a small diplomatic vessel equipped with ancient human technology, a symbolic gesture of peace. They transmitted a single message into the void: "To the Terran Union, we ask for dialogue. No weapons. No threats. Only truth." Then, the envoy disappeared beyond the border of human space. For weeks, nothing came back. The council waited, trapped between hope and fear. Finally, on the 27th day, the transmission returned. The hologram that appeared in the council chamber made the air itself grow heavy. Commander Ward stood before them, his uniform simple, his eyes piercing. "You ask for dialogue," he said softly. "But dialogue requires honesty. And your kind has never spoken in truth." The speaker stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Then teach us. Show us how to rebuild. The galaxy is falling apart." Ward studied him for a long time before replying. "You called us dangerous. You exiled us. You erased us from your records. But the galaxy still carries our mark. Every engine, every ship, every city. They all breathe because of human hands. And yet, you claim to lead them." The speaker bowed his head. "We were wrong." Ward's tone did not soften. "You were arrogant." He paused, then added quietly, "And arrogance demands silence." The transmission ended. The council chamber fell into chaos. Some saw it as a rejection. Others argued it was a test. But before any conclusion could be reached, sensors across the galaxy detected new energy signatures, massive, synchronized, and spreading fast. The Dominion had made their move. Human warships appeared at the edges of council space, hundreds of them, sleek and dark like living shadows. They didn't broadcast warnings. They didn't fire immediately. They simply appeared. Admiral Niven rushed into Ward's command room. "It's Rael," she said urgently. "He's launched the Dominion fleet. They're moving on Soloth Prime." Ward's calm shattered. He defied orders. Niven nodded grimly. "He's calling it justice." Ward clenched his fists. "He'll turn the galaxy's fear into hate again. Prepare the fleet. We're stopping him." In council space, panic erupted as the Dominion ships crossed into the core systems. Planetary defenses activated, but their systems failed instantly. The Dominion's weapons were unlike anything seen before, energy so condensed it warped space around it. When the first volley struck, an entire moon disintegrated into dust. Billions watched the attack through trembling screens, praying for it to end. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the Terran Union's true fleet arrived. Ward's ships dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding the Dominion armada in a vast ring of light. The two human forces faced each other across the void, one fueled by vengeance, the other by restraint. Ward opened a direct channel to Rael. "Stand down," he ordered. Rael's face appeared, full of fury. "You protect the monsters who destroyed us." Ward's voice was firm. "No. I protect what's left of us. Humanity doesn't kill out of pride. We choose when to fight, and when to forgive." Rael laughed bitterly. "Forgive? They turned our home into a graveyard." Ward's tone sharpened. "And you'll turn the galaxy into another one." Their standoff lasted only minutes, but it felt like eternity. Finally, Ward gave the signal. His ships unleashed a wave of electromagnetic pulses, disabling the Dominion's systems without firing a lethal shot. Rail's ship drifted powerless, its engines flickering. "You're a coward," Rail spat through the comms. Ward looked at him one last time. "No," he said softly. "I'm a reminder." Then the connection cut. The battle ended without another shot. The Dominion was defeated, their leader captured, their fleets disarmed. Across the galaxy, the watching worlds exhaled in disbelief. The humans had fought each other, not for dominance, but for restraint. They had proven once again that their silence had never been weakness. It had been control. Days later, Commander Ward transmitted one final message to the Council. "You see now what we are," he said. "You see the line we draw, even among ourselves. The galaxy thought our silence meant fear. But it meant discipline. It meant purpose. The next sound you hear from humanity will not be a cry of war. It will be the sound of balance restored." The message ended, and with it, the lights in the council chamber flickered and steadied. Outside, the riot stopped. The stars seemed brighter again. For the first time since the silence began, there was not just fear in the air, but hope. Humanity had spoken again, not with words of vengeance, but with action that echoed louder than any war. Far above, on Erebus Prime, Ward stood by the viewing glass, watching the stars burn steadily once more. "We gave them silence," he murmured, "so they could hear themselves." Admiral Niven joined him, her voice quiet. "And if they forget again?" Ward turned to her with a faint, knowing smile. "Then we'll remind them, once more, with silence." The stars shimmered faintly, as though the universe itself had bowed in acknowledgement. Humanity had not returned to rule the galaxy. They had returned to teach it, and this time, the galaxy was finally ready to listen. The 7th year after the silence began with a fragile calm. The great galactic war that so many had feared never came. Instead, the galaxy found itself staring at its reflection, forced to confront what it had become. The council's cities still stood, but their pride was gone. The riots had ended, not through violence, but through exhaustion. The people were tired of arrogance, tired of blame, tired of pretending they didn't need the species they once condemned. For the first time in history, the galaxy felt humbled. On Solith Prime, the speaker walked alone through the silent hall of the council chamber. The once glorious floor was cracked, the banners torn, the seats empty. Delegates from 1,000 worlds no longer gathered to boast or threaten. They were gone, scattered to their own dying systems. The speaker's reflection shimmered faintly in the dark glass of the dome above him, the stars twinkling far beyond. "We called ourselves the light of civilization," he whispered. "But we were just shadows cast by their flame." He turned as his aide entered, carrying a data crystal. "New transmission from Terran space, sir," she said softly. His tired eyes flickered with both hope and fear. "Play it." The hologram flickered to life, projecting the face of Commander Elias Ward. His voice was calm but colder this time, deliberate and precise. "This will be the final transmission to your council," he began. "Humanity does not seek vengeance. We do not seek dominion. But the galaxy will never again rule over us. The Terran Union has severed all ties with your governance. From this moment forward, every world that wishes for peace may approach us as equals. No more councils. No more decrees. Only balance." The speaker sank into his chair, his heart heavy with realization. Humanity had not just survived, they had rewritten the structure of power. The age of the council was over. The galaxy would now answer to a new order, one born not of force, but of silence, patience, and understanding. For centuries, the council had claimed to maintain peace, but it had done so through fear. Humanity had achieved in 7 years what the council had failed to do in 7 millennia: unity through consequence. Outside the capital, the skies above Solith Prime shimmered again with faint light. Dozens of small Terran drones descended silently from orbit, hovering over the cities. Each projected the same message into the air for all to see: We remember the dead, but we build for the living. The message pulsed in gentle rhythm, and then, without a sound, the drones ascended back into the stars. The crowds that had once screamed and rioted now stood in silence. Some kneeling, some weeping, others simply watching. Humanity's presence was not loud. It was steady, patient, and absolute. But even as peace began to take hold, deep within the Terran Union's hidden territory, the Dominion's remnants stirred again. Though Rael had been captured, his followers had scattered like embers in the dark. In the shadowed regions of the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The Terran Union has gone soft. They let the murderers live. A rogue commander named Varen took control of the Dominion's remnants. His fleet was small but deadly. Fanatics, soldiers, and survivors united by rage. Humanity was forged in pain, he told them. And we will remind the stars of it. Commander Ward was aware of the threat before it began. From the citadel of Erebus Prime, he watched Varen's fleet grow, intercepting secret transmissions and hidden mobilizations. He wants a war we've already won, said Admiral Niven, standing beside him. Ward's expression was grim. He doesn't want war. He wants to erase the lesson. He sighed. Prepare a counter-operation. No engagement. Just silence. Days later, as Varen's fleet left the shadows and began its advance toward the nearest alien colony, it encountered something unexpected. No resistance, no defenses, just hundreds of silent Terran drones waiting in formation. The Dominion ships approached cautiously, scanning the objects. Then the drones activated, releasing waves of holographic projections that filled the void. It wasn't an army. It was a memory. The Dominion crew watched in stunned silence as images of the past played before them. Earth before the wars, children laughing, oceans shimmering, cities alive. The recordings continued, humans exploring the stars for the first time, helping alien worlds rebuild after disasters, rescuing strangers during wars the Council had ignored. Varen shouted for the drones to be destroyed, but no one obeyed. His crew stood frozen, watching the images unfold like ghosts of a forgotten age. Finally, the last hologram appeared. Commander Ward himself, younger, standing beside an alien ambassador, shaking hands. His recorded voice spoke softly, "We don't conquer. We connect. We don't dominate. We endure. The galaxy will remember us not for how we fought, but for how we lived." Then the projection faded, and the drones disassembled into light, vanishing into the void. The Dominion fleet did not continue its advance. It turned back, scattered, and disappeared into silence. Some of its members joined the Terran Union afterward, others simply vanished. Commander Ward had won the war without firing a single shot. Again, on Solath Prime, the speaker delivered his final address to what remained of the Council. His voice echoed through the nearly empty chamber. "We built towers of arrogance and called them justice," he said. "We silenced voices that spoke of truth, and now we live in the silence they left behind. But within that silence, we found clarity. The humans were not our destroyers, they were our teachers." He paused, looking up at the faint blue glow that had once marked the Terran constellations. "They showed us that power is not in speaking the loudest, but in knowing when not to speak at all." He ended his speech there, but across the galaxy, the words were repeated. On colonies, outposts, and refugee worlds, beings of every species whispered the same message, "We remember." That phrase became a symbol, painted on walls, engraved on monuments, written in every language. The galaxy had found a new kind of unity, not through law, but through shared humility. Back on Erebus Prime, Ward stood once more at the grand viewing deck, his reflection merging with the stars. "They are changing," Admiral Niven said quietly. Ward nodded. "Yes," he murmured. "They finally understand the weight of silence." She turned to him. "What happens now?" Ward smiled faintly, his gaze lost in the stars. "Now, we build. But not like before. This time, the galaxy will build with us, or not at all." Far beyond the reach of senses, the Terran Union began to expand, not through conquest, but through invitation. Worlds that wished for balance were guided silently toward the new frontier. A growing alliance built on principles humanity had once been mocked for: empathy, patience, and strength through understanding. And so, the galaxy that once exiled humanity now looked to them for hope. The era of the Council had ended. The age of silence had transformed into the age of remembrance. Humanity had spoken only once since their exile, but that single whisper had reshaped the stars. As the light of 1,000 suns reflected off Erebus Prime's silver towers, Commander Ward turned and said to his officers, "Let history remember that we were silent, not because we were weak, but because we were wise." Outside, the stars pulsed faintly in response, as if the universe itself had heard and agreed.